Hey, what's up? Coach Bracken here with House of Athletes. So today's video, I want to go over on velocity-based training and why you should be performing it. So what is velocity-based training? Well, velocity-based training is determined on how fast you're moving the bar. What adaptation are you going for is the biggest thing when it comes to that. It's not necessarily weight, but how you're moving it. And the reason why I really love y'all going with it because there's so many times if you do a percentage based training, but not that you might not. There's some days where if it calls for 90%, well, if you're not feeling that, then what's the point of getting? You're not going to get the same benefit as you would if you regulate that. So what I mean is, so how I do it is divided into two categories: is dynamic effort and max effort. Max effort is pretty obvious. It's this right here, absolute strength, and it's basically right around that 80 to 90% based on how fast you're moving the bar. So say we got max effort, right? So when it comes down to it, so this is how I go off of max effort. So typically, say we got a 5x3. So right here, this is a column that we're going to go for. So we're going to take 84% of our 1 rep max, and we have to hit a 0.43 meters per second in order to add weight. And that might go at 80. Then we'll go at 86%. Then we have to hit 0.41, and so forth, so forth. So if it calls for 90, so typically in a regular program, in traditional program, if it calls for 90% at 5x3, well, every set you got hit. You got to be able to hit that 90%. So that might, for that day, if you're not feeling it, that 90% is going to feel so much, and you might end up failing on that. So what's the benefit, risk versus reward? Why not go off of how you're moving for that day, and that way we can still get the the stimulus that we want, get that adaptation that we want, and still get the benefits without having to, fatigue our players. And then also it helps prevent injuries. A lot of times is what happens if you go to that point where you're at 94% and you're not moving it that good, and it helps prevent fatigue. And fatigue is when fatigue happens, that you're not able to think as sharp, so your technique might be off, or something else where like a freak injury might end up happening if you're not able to regulate your percentage and your bar speed. That's why I love velocity based training, because I never do a 1 rep max. Now I'll do a maybe most I'll do is a 2 rep max, and you might have to hit that for, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 0.36 at 92%. That's the highest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So you'll have to hit 94% at 0.34. That's the highest I will ever go on anything, and it helps me, regulate where they at. So if they don't hit all these, they don't get to this. They don't get to 94%. Where now I'm able to regulate what they're doing for that day, and it can help me judge where they are at. So if they're not moving that load as as fast as they should be doing it, well, I'm going to lighten the load up so we can still get um, the same benefit without having to take the risk for the injury. The biggest thing, what I learned at UIS when I was an intern there is, don't train the muscle, train the adaptation, train what you're going for. So now let's talk about dynamic effort. So this is what dynamic effort is. Dynamic effort is right in that accelerated strength. Is how fast can we move the bar? Is how fast can we accelerate the load? So this might be a bench. This will be a bench press, a squat, a deadlift, and you have to move it between. Let's see. Actually, no, strength speed. So now our goal is move it between 0.75 and 0.1. move above point 0.1, we add weight. If you move it below point 0.7, I'll give you your point 0.7. Then we might lighten the load depending on where they are in the program as well. And then the percentage that we start off with, it just depends on if we're adding accommodating resistance. That's another thing I love about dynamic effort. It allows me to add accommodating resistance. What accommodating resistance is when I add either chains or bands. Typically, I like bands a little bit more because it doesn't really change a whole lot. Because when you're doing max effort work, you have to decelerate to accelerate through the range of motion. Where when you add bands, it allows you to accelerate through the entire range of motion. So it helps you work on producing increasing that rate of force development. That's the biggest thing that we all go for as strength and conditioning coaches. Increase that rate of force development. If you increase that, it allows you to produce more power, and it allows you to be a lot more faster and explosive on the field. What percentage do we start with? Typically, it's a 40 to 60%, depending on where they're at. If I'm doing eccentric with bands or isometric with bands, I will start at the 30% range and then work my way up. The velocity, I stick there between point 0.75 and 1, when we go strength speed. Now, however, if it's like a trap bar, then I'm going to go to this to 0.1 to 0.13. Then we work on speed strength instead of strength speed. So this is what this allows us to do, is work on our acceleration through our entire range of motion, whether we're adding bands or not. So I do a progression through. I do a whole program of triphasic, eccentric, isometric, and concentric without bands first, and then we go with bands, and then we work on complete speed, working on how fast can you move the bar, whether it be a quarter squat. I don't really like doing a traditional squat with that, more like a quarter squat than anything else with hand supported, obviously, because that allows you to produce more force through that. And then I also, will do, where was I? Yeah. So that's kind of what we will do with all that. Um, and I think, by adding velocity base, you're able to regulate where they are at their percentages, and based on how fast they're moving the bar is what the load will determine. So I think it helps prevent injuries, it helps performance, and also you don't have to do a 1 rep max to get to get benefits. The days of producing max amount of weight, I think, is kind of overrated. It's all about how fast can I move this weight, move how fast can I move this bar with this amount of weight, and then yeah, I mean numbers are good, but I'd rather be able to move with the weight. Because in a game, you're not going to have, like, who gives a shit what your bench press, what your squat is, but how fast you can move it. That's the thing, power. How fast can you produce this power? Is the biggest thing when it comes to any sport, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. That's why I love velocity based training, because I can regulate your load, I can regulate your percentage based on how fast you're moving it. The faster the bar that you're moving is, the better you're going to be able to produce force, which will get you on the field improvement, which can get you that, check, that scholarship, that payday, whatever that may be. That's why I truly believe this is the way to go. But I'm not saying this honestly is not not everybody has access to, velocity based training, but I think it is the number one way to go if you have access to it. If you guys got any questions over velocity based training and why it's important, one, it helps regulate your load, prevent injuries, and help you see how explosive you really are. Because when you're doing one rep maxes, you're not really seeing how explosive you are. You're seeing how strong you are. Explosiveness over strength is by times a lot more important, I think, because many times in college there was guys that can squat heavy. Then there's guys that could weren't that strong, but yet they freaking balled out on the field. That's what we try to do is get you better on the field. Because if everybody was worried about about being strong as hell, powerlifters would be in the NFL, dominating the game and everything like that. So there you have. That's my take on velocity based training and why it's important. I hope this helps. I'll catch you guys all next time. Next week I'll go over on how to program this. So be lookout for that video. I'll catch you guys all later. Peace.